Help support the companies that support our community. I started out with a piece of maple. It's 3x3 and about 11 inches long. I found center on it and got it mounted up in between centers on the lathe. I used a spindle gouge. The lathe speed's running about 2,000 RPMs and went ahead and got it trued up. Once it was true, I put a tenon down on each end, and we'll go ahead and part it here in just a second. So I'm going to make this is going to be an urn, and I'm going to do the base and the lid. So the tenons to start shaping it after we get it separated here. And I just used a parting tool there, broke it in half, and then we'll get it mounted in the chuck. And so the first part I'm going to work on is the lid, and this is the inside of the lid. So I'm going to use the 1.5 inch threaded rings, and I'm going to use an 1.5 inch Forstner bit for that. This makes it really quick and easy. So just drill into it the depth of the rings, and then they slide right in. So I went a little bit deeper than the depth of the ring because I need to clean up the face of that. So I just want to test fit it real quick and then clean off that material. So I'm shaping the underside of the lid right there with the #1 hollower and getting that little point from the Forstner bit cleaned up out of there. And then we'll come around the side and start shaping the top of it. And I switch back to the spindle gouge for the outside of it. I'm just going to shape the lid, and then we'll actually use the recess that we just made there with the Forstner bit to clean off the top of it when I get that done. Now that we have all that sanded up, because you're not going to be able to come back and clean that up afterwards, go ahead and part the lid off, and then we'll switch jaws and finish off the top of it. There we go, and just a quick little process, flipping it around. Use the #1 hollower again to smooth over the top of it, and I will run through all the grits again and get this sanded up. This is the base now. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the Forstner bit. Going to use the 1.5 inch to make the recess for the rings. And then once I get that done, I'm going to switch over to a smaller Forstner bit and then go down inside of it. And this will clean out some of the material inside. So I just stepped down a couple of bits so it's still left a little shelf there for the rings to sit on, and cleaned out some of the material. And you can see it's not true yet. We're just working on the inside of it. So I cleaned up the face of it, and I did the same thing with that. I just went down a little deeper than I needed to so that I could come back and clean up this material here. Then I brought the tailstock back up with the live center and started shaping the outside with the spindle gouge. And that the tailstock just supports it. It's out there, you know, about 8 or 9 inches. So you need a little bit of support with it. We'll get this shaped and then we'll start hollowing out the inside of it. So before I start hollowing it though, I am going to drill a hole through it with the Forstner bit. So the size of this really doesn't matter. I think I used maybe 3/4 on this one, but it depends on what type of, you know, what the size of material you're working with is. So it's totally, you know, up to you how big you want to make the stand that I'm going to do. So I drilled about 3/4 of the way through with this size right here, and then I switched and dropped down a couple of sizes, and so this one is going to go through and come out the other side. And so I'm kind of making like a horn shape. So I needed it thicker on this side than on the other side, so it looks like it's tapering down. And just went ahead and kept going and popped out the other side. And as far as hollowing it out too, this actually really helps if there's a hole in it, and there's a couple of them in there. So you don't need to set up any, you know, laser or anything. There's a hole in there, you can stick your finger in there and tell how thick the wall thickness is, or just look at it. So I got those 2 holes in there, so it actually goes pretty quick as far as hollowing it out goes. You can just turn off lathe and see right where you're at. And after I got it all hollowed, went ahead and ran through all the grits up to 600. Once I had that done, we'll go ahead and flip it around, and same thing, I'm going to use the jaws and that recess to hang onto it on the chuck side, and I'll bring the live center up to hold onto it, and we'll get that foot taken off. So it is out there quite a ways, and the only thing that's holding it on the headstock side is that little recess there. So I didn't part it off while the lathe was spinning. I just brought that little point down as far as I could, and then just took the saw and popped it loose. And then on this, same thing, just dry sanded, ran through all the grits up to 600 again. All right, for the stand, I'm going to use walnut. This is some beautiful Clara walnut, and I'm just kind of rough shaping it at this point. And we'll go ahead and sand and cut this down on the bandsaw here in a second, but just kind of giving it a rough shape. I did one of these a while ago, so I kind of know what shape I'm looking for. And then I used a smaller piece, and this is going to be the little horn that sticks out the other side. And after tracing that one, this is a better piece of it over here. It just has more character, so I went ahead and switched sides and did it on that side. And then cut them out on the bandsaw. We're going to use a few different sanding methods to start shaping and sanding this after I get them cut out. That one there is pretty straightforward as far as cutting it out. The larger one is a little bit different because the base of it is going to be the base when I'm done, but it needs to taper down quite a bit. So I'm going to shape that on the bandsaw here in a second. I'm just trimming the sides off and trying to get it close so there's not a ton of sanding once I move over. So I'm going to start the sanding process on the oscillating sander, and this is 80 grit. And so whenever I'm doing stuff like this where I need to shape it, this is pretty much how I start. So this cleans off a lot of material pretty quick, and that's a little sanding pad eraser, and it cleans off the sandpaper. So you're just kind of knocking the corners off, getting this all cleaned up, and getting the basic shape down. So this next little thing, you probably see me use it a few times. It has like an inner tube bladder inside of it, and then you put on the sanding sleeves over the top of it, and that little silver handle on it. You can put this on your drill and use it. It has bearings in it. So the sleeves, you can get these anywhere from 80, I think, to probably to 400. And it's really nice because you don't need to fill that bladder up all the way, so it kind of wraps around the piece a little bit. And so I went ahead and went through all of these. The whole sanding process of these two pieces, probably like 3 hours, as far as shaping them, getting them all sanded up and cleaning them up. And after I got it all shaped and fairly clean, I switched over and started hand sanding them after this. But this little sanding system here works great for oddball shapes like this. And then I just hand sanded the rest of them all the way up to 600 and got it ready to mount it into the urn. So the two little parts that are going to the urn, I just kind of would hand sand those, dry fit them in the two holes, and just try and get them as close as I could. So a little bit of wood glue, put them in there, figure out the angle, and I dry fit this to make sure it was going to stand up straight many times as I was going along. But I just put a little bit of glue on with a Q-tip, went ahead and did the other side too, and then we'll let that set up for about an hour or so. So because there are going to be little gaps around it, even though, you know, after you get this part done here, I'm going to glue from the inside too. So you just kind of get them set in there, walk away for an hour, come back. And then I went ahead and put some glue on the inside to make sure it really bonded them together and filled in all the little gaps. And then for the threaded rings, mixed up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy and went ahead and put those in the lid and the base. So the 5-minute epoxy works great. It just, the rings are, they're cut, undercut, or back cut on the outside, so they're almost like a little barb. So as long as your hole is fairly close, you don't need to worry about them coming out. So I just put just little bits on it. So the first one I'm putting in is the female. So I left them screwed together so I had something to hang on to. And then we'll put that in the lid. And then once you get it down there, you can unscrew it and go ahead and put the male side in the base. There we go. It's all epoxied in. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some walnut oil on it. Just take your time when you're working around the threads with the walnut oil. You don't want to get the walnut oil on the threads. That stuff does dry and it'll kind of make it kind of gummy on the thread. So just be careful and just walnut oil the whole thing down. There we go, I got it all done. So the overall height is 9.5 inches and the little urn here is 2.5 inches in diameter. So this is a fun project. So I did one of these on a larger scale. It's been quite a few years ago, but here's the bigger one I did. And it's a fun process of making them go through like that. It's just kind of a lot of sanding and fitting and sanding and fitting, but I really like the way I did it. On the bigger one I made a whole base and then just put the kind of horn part here into that base to hold on to it, but I wanted to try a smaller one like this where it just stood up on its own like so. But it was a fun one. And as far as turning the urn, just pretty straightforward, you know, hollowing out the little piece, but it was a fun one. And there's a beautiful walnut. It's just got some great grain in it, some great color. It's just absolutely amazing. All right, hope you enjoyed the video. And remember, we'll be at the AEW show at the Portland Convention Center this weekend. So we'll be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you're going to be in town, please stop by and say hi. Just swing by the booth. All right, we will see you next time. Take care.